You come up with a great story, the hero has an actual arc, is likable, and the journey is fun.
Some friends become enemies, some enemies become friends. Yeah.
But you know what's better than one great story idea? Once you've created a solid main character, the next step is to make solid side characters, but we're going to skip right over that for now and go straight into weaving story threads because Fallout just came out on Amazon and I didn't binge watch that show for nothing. So, in order to take full advantage of everyone's short attention spans and excitement over the next big thing, we're going to look at 4 ways to story weave, which Fallout did remarkably well. Now, to my surprise, a story weave isn't what you call it when you write drunk, and it's also not the story you tell the police officer when he pulls you over for straddling the median outside a middle school at 2 p.m. A story weave refers to a story where each character has approximately equal weight in the emotional and physical gravitas of the plot. I have no clue if I'm using that word right. This is mucho bueno, as it gives your audience a crapload of opportunities to emotionally connect with characters, providing a richer experience and telling a fuller story. But we're definitely playing a game with razor blades and fireworks when we do this, because a bigger cast doesn't guarantee a better story. Think of The Bachelor. There are 60 some people on that show, and it's terrible. And that brings us to point number 1. Do not compromise telling one good story for the sake of telling multiple mediocre stories. In German, this translates into quality over quantity. So, I've made close to about a million videos at this point, and in a lot of them I say something along the lines of, character is why we care. Mathematically speaking, it would make sense that the more characters we care about, the more we will enhance the story. But here's the catch. If you're going to blend several stories into one, you need to get me to like or at least be interested in all storylines, otherwise certain parts of the story are going to lag. Fallout pulls this off for Lucy, Max, Coop, and Norm, providing us with characters that have clear goals, sympathetic motives, and unique perspectives which all serve to enhance the central story. Key word: enhance. Don't have Bobby, Jessica, and Buttcrackosaurus all contributing their third of the story, and then have a fourth character, let's call her Tamantha, doing some irrelevant stuff off in another storyline. Even if that storyline is cool, either tie it in with your central story or make it its own story. My focus is weak. My doctor says I have a lot of ADDs. If you, as a writer, can't keep your focus, then you've got a manuscript's chance in hell that, as an audience member, I'm going to be able to follow your story. The main cast of Fallout all have compelling standalone threads, all of which have appropriate allocation of time and focus to tell the full tale of why the bombs were dropped, who the people running the vaults are, why Max's childhood was awful, why Lucy's mom is MIA, why Coop does what he do, and how absolutely shafted Norm is living underground in a town full of crazies. Which leads us into point number 2. The point of multiple story threads is to give your audience a fuller, more engaging central story. Let's get you guys a doodle. So, no matter the story, our main character is a lens. Their main function is to let us watch the story. They can be a lens without a lot of personality or growth, like Nick Carraway from The Great Gatsby, or they can be a lens that makes me cry, like Joel Miller. In Fallout, the goal is to give our audience several lenses, not so that we see the same story 4 different ways, but so that we see one story in its totality. Think of it this way: you and your 3 imaginary friends can all go to Popeyes and get a diarrhea supreme. All 4 of you will experience the same thing 4 different ways. Yes, there are stories like this, but that's dinner for another day. Now, let's take those same 3 imaginary friends, and each one of you has to contribute to making a diarrhea supreme at home. One person makes the bread, one makes the chicken, one makes the jalapeno sauce, and one makes the laxative. All 4 of you brought something different, but you created one unique mouthfeel, an epic trip to the bathroom. Fallout does the latter, using each character to add something to the bigger picture. Granted, each character is motivated by the same MacGuffin, aka the Tootsie Pop Turtle's head, but their backstories all blend into the bigger history of Vault Tech, why the war happened, what the ultimate power of the Wasteland is, and how Hank McClane is the worst father of the future. These stories all go together well because, where 3 characters might have a blind spot in their knowledge on a topic, the fourth is able to bridge that gap. This means the audience can know what is going on, but not all of the heroes do. So, essentially, a more complicated version of Jerry Springer.
You are not.
This is a type of storytelling irony that can be used for raising suspense. To give an example, we learn that Moldiver isn't evil through Lucy's storyline and her experiences. We know Hank is a turd. Because we know both these things, but Max doesn't, my butt was clenched tight enough to make a diamond when he showed up to save the day. Why? Because here comes hero number 2 to save hero number 1 by accidentally screwing everything up out of the goodness of his heart. That's great use of the story weave because while it detracts from a story's mystery, it increases the suspense. If we only had Max's perspective, we would wonder if he would save Lucy in time. If we only had Lucy's perspective, we might wonder what she's going to decide to do about her dad. Since we have both, we worry that both characters, in trying to do their best, successfully screw everything up. And maybe you're shouting at your phone right now, saying,
But Andrews, there is still a lot of mystery in the story. The multiple perspectives didn't ruin anything. You're the dumbest person alive.
And look, I'm not going to tell you which 2/3 of that statement are correct, but in the writing world, mystery and suspense are about as closely related as members of the royal family. Your choice as a writer is how you want to walk that line, which is no different than any other story. Your goal is always to show me what I need to see and hide what needs to be kept hidden, preferably in plain sight. Think of yourself as a stripper, but with words, and your characters are an ill-fitted sequin brassiere. Show me enough that I'm intrigued, but not so much that you ruin the fun. And that brings us to stripper pole number 3. Use your characters' differing vantage points to make exposition entertaining. And I know some of you that just called me the dumbest person alive are thinking, half of those aren't even words, but that's beside the point. Having multiple story threads allows you to explain your story in an exciting way. In the old Fallout games, you would walk around a vault listening to old recordings of dead dwellers to figure out how everything went wrong. In the show, we have Norm solving the mystery as his character arc takes him from a coward who hid in storage during a raid all the way to the only man willing to question what happened in the other vaults. See how that's cooler? In the games, learning how a city had been founded or destroyed was an entire side mission, whereas in the show, we learn about what Shady Sands was because of Max's childhood, and we learn how Shady Sands fell apart because of Lucy successfully achieving her goal to find her father. That's way more time efficient. Now, Fallout 3 was a huge game, and it's been roughly 1,000 years since I played it last, but I don't know if we ever got an explanation as to why the war started. Frankly, I didn't need one. I was shooting teddy bears out of a rocket launcher. But the show gives us an explanation, and they don't do it by making us watch some old news footage. They don't do it by having us find a 200-year-old newspaper. They do it by giving us Coop's backstory, a man who witnessed the events firsthand. Side note, if you're writing a story with one main character, newspaper headlines, radio announcements, TV reports are all valid ways to convey bits of information that don't fit organically anywhere else. But if you have a ghoul bounty hunter, why not use them? Since we have these 4 main characters, we get all of this context and backstory with none of the boring, long-winded exposition. None of the double asterisks, see Appendix F for more details garbage. Everything we want to know for our story is right there, being discovered by the heroes. The hardest part is figuring out how to release these details in a manner that makes sense, and that is our 4th and final point. Pace your stories appropriately. Now look, I know, nothing is more ambiguous than pacing. When do you ask her out? When do you start paying for dinner? When do you show her your fingernail clipping collection? The answer for all 3 is never. But when it comes to story pacing, especially when we have multiple story threads, this is going to come down to your preference. Do you want more mystery or more irony? Are you telling a comedy or a tragedy? What makes the story suspenseful? What makes the story captivating besides its main characters? That tidbit should go without saying, but as I mentioned with Magic Systems last week, here it is, go look at it, make me feel special, is that you will need to struggle and go through trial and error before you figure out the perfect pacing for your story, when you should switch from one thread to another, when 2 threads should overlap and diverge in order to produce the most captivating story. And this is where, and I can taste the backlash already, outlining might just save your sanity, or at least help you finish your story. Rearranging bullet points requires fewer tiers and less floor space than rewriting an entire manuscript. Discovery writing is great, and you still can do that if you like, but get the bones down if you're trying to do something as elaborate as a story weave. From one writer to another, just pretend you like yourself and make your life a little easier rather than writing and rewriting a rough draft before realizing it doesn't make sense and that you forgot one of your story threads 300 pages ago. Always keep in mind, however you decide to tell your story, we never want to jeopardize quality for quantity. All threads of your story should add to a central rope. Don't have tangents that don't provide anything of substance. Use your characters to help the audience understand blind spots in other parts of your story, and pace your story in a way that allows these blind spots to enhance mystery, suspense, or dramatic irony. And finally, make me proud and write a damn good story. The end.